Alright, so this is going to be an interesting video because I'm going to explain two things. The first is how to not think about herbs, how to not look at them, how to not approach them. And secondly, I'm going to go over the different forms of herbs that these herbs come in so that you can understand and make an intelligent, educated decision as to which is the best, which is the most optimal form for you so that you're not wasting your money, so that you're not wasting your time, so you're not, even more importantly, so you're not potentially even harming yourself. So first, how to not think about herbs. The way to not approach herbs. And I realize it's very contrarian and very kind of negative, but it's important to point out. So we need to understand that more is not always better when it comes to herbs. And we need to understand that this modern kind of mechanistic reductionist thinking is not really appropriate when we approach herbs. Now, to illustrate this, what I mean, and an easy way to understand this, is when you see, quote, standardized extracts. Now, when you see that, you might say, oh, well, it's a standardized extract of let's say, whatever herb it might be. Let's say we could use reishi, for example. It's a standardized extract that has 80% polysaccharides. Now, most people that are new to herbs and are coming from this kind of reductionist paradigm would say, well, it has 80% polysaccharides. That must be the best product. It must be better than a product that only has 10 or 20%. When in reality, it's not really the case. It's not really true. Because this modern reductionist thinking is what led us to pharmaceuticals and all of the side effects that we all know that these create. Now, the difference between a pharmaceutical and a whole herb is that a pharmaceutical says, oh, well, it must be this one chemical or these one or two chemicals, and that must be all that's creating the effect from the herb. When in reality, herbs are very complex, and our understanding of them is very minimal, and our instruments that are able to discern what's what are very simplistic and very minimal at the same time. So sure, we might be able to identify 8 chemicals, but what about the infinite number of things that we just haven't identified? What about the things that our instruments can't pick up, that are cofactors, that are creating a synergistic effect, which makes the whole herb work, in which then as a result, as we see, when we remove all of those things, then we get side effects. Then we get all these things that we have to deal with modern pharmaceuticals, which if you haven't heard this, I think it's something like 75 to 80% of all modern pharmaceuticals actually come from plants. So people think, oh, herbs are stupid, plants don't work, plants don't do this. That's where all the pharmaceuticals are coming from, basically. So why not stick with something that's a little more holistic, something that's been done for thousands of years, something that people have actually used and have proven. So again, just to recap, more is not always better. This modern reductionist thinking is not really appropriate when we think about herbs because herbs typically contain very complex nutrient profiles which all work together to create the effect. So if we say, oh, polysaccharides are good or L-DOPA is good, we gotta just get all of that, then we're basically moving away from a natural herbal remedy and more to a pharmaceutical and more to a drug, which I'm not saying is a bad thing, and I'm not saying isn't something that we should never ever use. Because if we're in an extreme situation where we might need a pharmaceutical, we're going to need something that's going to be really concentrated and really potent and really effective. So these really incredibly intense, quotes, sometimes very potent standardized extracts or things that only dial in on one specific chemical, those can be appropriate in very extreme situations. Likewise, one example just to illustrate this as one Mucuna product on the market you might see might be a 10-to-1 extract of Mucuna, that basically means it's a whole plant 10 to 1, 10 parts whole herb or concentrated down into 1 part extract. But then there might be another product on the market that's 80%, 90% L-DOPA. So to the modern reductionist mind, we think, oh, that must be better. When in reality, unless we have like Parkinson's or some serious neurological conditions, we really don't need that because it's more of a drug, less of a food, less of a tonic herb, less of a supplement, and more of a drug that's going to have a very one-way aggressive effect. So hopefully that clears things up, and hopefully that explains why, for me, for my own personal usage, I've just stuck with full plant concentrated extracts. This is why I feel like for most people, this is the safest and the easiest way to do it, because it's basically like a dehydrated tea, which we know Chinese medicine, Ayurvedic medicine have been using for thousands of years as the optimal delivery medium for herbal medicines. And even still today, a lot of herbal medicine is delivered in China through the tea form, meaning you go to the pharmacy, you get a bag of herbs, you go home, you cook the herbs, you drink that. So what a 10-to-1 concentrated extract is, or some ratio around there, is just kind of a modern improvement on that, because if you were to try to cram 10 pounds into your teapot, it's going to be kind of hard. So that's why I'm a fan of those, and that's why I think that they are much safer and much more ideal than a quote standardized extract or something that's say 80% this or 50% that, because when we reach that, we're getting more into a drug, less into an herbal medicine. So now that we've kind of talked about how not to think about herbs and how you should actually approach herbs from a more holistic point of view, I want to go over really quickly just some of the forms of herbs that are out there on the market. Now, I just mentioned concentrated extracts. And when I say 10-to-1 or 8-to-1 or 12-to-1 or whatever you might see, that means basically what happens is they take 12 pounds or 10 pounds of the whole herb, cook that down in hot water, and then dehydrate off the water and do a really advanced kind of spray drying process that then leaves the powdered extract left over. So it's 10 pounds of whole herb becomes 1 pound of whole extract, which is incredibly potent, incredibly flavorful, and incredibly easy to take. Some other forms that herbs come on the market are tinctures, which is an alcohol extract. Most on the market are incredibly weak, or incredibly dilute, so you have to take a lot to really get the effect, but still is a good way to do it, and there are some companies making good products. Next is just the whole herb. So those would be something you could make your own tincture with, you can make your own tea with, or some sort of extraction. And next would be an herbal powder, which some people see these and they get confused. They say, oh, well, I bought this herb in a capsule and it's powdered, and it was $12 and I'm getting a great deal. But in reality, what you're getting is the whole herb ground up into a powder, and then you're eating it. So you're basically, if you were just have that whole herb and you would take a little bite of it, that's basically the dosage that you're getting. And the issue there is that with some herbs, they're bound with what's called chitin, which is an indigestible fiber that our body can't break down. So sure, we can take it, sure, we can biomechanically ingest it, but we can't really absorb it or get any of the benefit from it. Also, in a powdered herb, typically needs to be extracted in some way, whether a tea or a tincture, so that's part of the process that needs to be in there. So if you're buying an herbal powder and it doesn't say extract or concentrated extract, and it doesn't specify a ratio, it doesn't say 10-to-1 or 8-to-1, you should really be a little bit suspicious, because if a company has an 8-to-1 or 10-to-1 extract, they would want you to know that, because it's a really good thing, and it's really what's the word here? It means it's really potent. So when you see that as a consumer, it would tell you, okay, this is going to be really potent and maybe I should check it out. So if your company is not telling you, if you don't see it on the package, likely not a concentrated extract. It's likely just an herbal powder that's ground up, and it's going to need to be extracted in some way for you to be able to get some benefit from it. So hopefully that's a good overview of the whole spectrum of the best form of herbs, pros and cons of each, and then also how to understand and approach herbs intelligently without trying to think that they're pharmaceuticals and without trying to make them like pharmaceuticals. And again, this is just what I'm sharing with you from my 6, 7, 8 years of consistent research on this subject, consistent self-experimentation with lots of different products and lots of different things that are out there, as well as just reading and working with people and doing consultations and all these kinds of things. So hopefully that helps you. Hopefully that clears some things up, because I get a lot of questions about this, and I know there's a lot of confusion out there because there's a lot of products on the market. I know I've wasted a lot of money, I've wasted a lot of time, I've tried a lot of things. So I just hopefully can save you some of that hassle, some of that frustration. So if you have any questions or comments, post them below, and I'll talk to you soon.